Okay, well, first thing I'd just like to invite people to do, well, I'll do that in a moment. I'll just go over the overview of the day. I was telling Shez that I'm going to do something. I think I'm going to do something I've never done like this before. So I hope it's successful. I was looking at the notes of what people wanted, and there was a fair bit of energy on games. So I'll offer you an additional 1 or 2 games. Maybe I'll start with one, and I may do another at the end. I am going to then do as efficiently as possible a little history of theater of the oppressed. I was going to save it for the end today, but I think it's important before we get into the work that you really get the context of how the work evolved. It's actually very important in order to understand your way as a practitioner, to understand the evolution. So if you're evolving it yourself, you're doing so consciously and not accidentally, right? And then there was a fair bit of energy. A fair number of people were very interested in the play devising process. And I'm going to take us through a play devising process. Normally, we choose themes or burning questions, and we send people off in groups to create plays, and then they bring it back to the big group and we work on it. I don't think that'll be useful today, but I'll actually take you through a detailed play creation process, which will include image theater. We will use some of the theatrics to do that process, and there'll be skills and techniques that I have found over the years to be the most useful in that process. So hopefully that will go well. I've never done it quite like this in a training. Devising, that this should be a 3-day workshop, but we'll see what we can do in under an hour with it. We may not even complete a play, but we'll get close, and we're not going to do forum with it, which is a whole other, process. But you'll just see, and many of you are talking about how to apply things in the classroom. And you can anything we do today, you can use elements of it at least back in your own settings. So, and then we'll leave about a half an hour for questions and closure. How does that all sound? Does that sound reasonable? Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I hope it goes well. I'm excited, and I get excited sometimes when I'm playing with the edge. If things are too easy and too safe, it's not as interesting sometimes. Okay, so first thing I'd like to do is I'll invite everybody to stand up. You may need to adjust and if you don't want to stand up, that's fine too. And then I'm going to have you do an image or two just to start. One is, how are you feeling right now? I think most of you, it's the end of your day. So how are you feeling right now, given where you're coming from? What's this moment? And put that in your body as an image. Sculpt yourself in an image of how you're feeling right now. Maybe overwhelmed, or whatever it is, or excited. Yeah, let's strike an image. And with image work, it's kind of an exaggeration of reality. Amplify your image now. Do it a little more extreme, whatever it is. If you're feeling very small and shy, that's okay. Be extremely small and shy. And then find a word or phrase that goes with this. And no, actually complete the sentence, I feel. Complete the sentence, I feel. I feel exhausted. I feel intrigued. I feel thoughtful, whatever it is. Complete the sentence. Okay,
Are we supposed to say those out, Marc?
Yeah, you can say it out loud, but most of you are on mute, so it's really for yourself.
Exhausted and intrigued together. Intrigued, or rather excited and exhausted. Exhausted
Okay,
because the whole
beautiful.
day
And then
work.
you can shake it out. Thank you. Great. I'll invite you just so we get a little window into how you're doing right now. You can put that word or phrase in chat if you wish. So the whole group gets to see how others are doing right now. Yeah. There may be things that went on in your day that are impacting how you're doing. Ooh, Priyanka, I'm curious what that means. So a variety. Beautiful. And people can just scroll through if you wish. I'm not going to read them. Ah, thank you. Yeah. The end of your day may be different than you started your day. Beautiful. And as we say in Theater of the Oppressed, there may be a rainbow of feelings. You may be feeling exhausted and energized all at the same time. That's also possible, right? So you may be feeling many things, but that was one little piece. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do a game. Some of you might know this one. It's comes out of the Theater of the Oppressed. Um, uh, it's sometimes called Opposite Jackson. How many of you know that game? Some of you know that game, I think. How many of you know that? Oh, okay, maybe not. Okay. So I'm going to call out an instruction and I'm going to invite you to do it. So the first one, and you're going to move with the instruction. So near, you're going to come close to the camera. Far from the camera. Near, far. Now, when I call out near and far, you're going to do the opposite. So if I say near, you're going to go far. Okay? And vice versa. Okay. Near, far. Near. Okay, good. Okay, great. Now, and you may stand for this. Up. So you're going to get high, right? Down. Up. Down. And because this game is opposite Jackson, when I say up, you go down. When I say down, you go up. Okay, ready? Up, down. Okay, good. You get the idea. Now we'll do one more. You can use your imagination if you're leading this game. You can call anything you want. This works in person or on Zoom, but on Zoom, let's do this. Open, your eyes wide open, closed. Open, closed. Okay, so now the opposite. Open, closed. Okay, so the last part of this game, I'm going to mix it up. It's going to be near, far, up, down, open, closed, and just do the opposite, please. Okay, open, closed, down, near, far, up, down, open, near, up. Oh, you all are very good. Okay, that's all. Give yourselves a round of applause. I think Shez taught us the Zoom applause. Wonderful. I think Shez, there's somebody coming in, right? Okay, beautiful. Just briefly, that's all. This game you could do more steps. You all were quite good. If it was first thing in the morning, it would have been harder. But any comments about that game? We don't need to talk a lot about it, but anything anybody wants to say? Yeah, Shez.
So we have variations of it. I mean, of course, the obvious one is like a Simon Says, and then you go into opposites, right? But we also do it with beans, right? And in Hindi, chota means small, and there's also like a cartoon character called Chota Bean. So we play Chota Bean, yeah. And then you have all kinds of different beans, and then you do the opposites of the beans as well. And you can play around with their bodies, and they are like a string bean or a jelly bean, or like, whoever's the latest best dancer, like a Hrithik Roshan bean, or, a Govinda bean, or whatever you want. So, and that's like a fun little variation with the very little ones.
Great, wonderful. Yeah, any other comments?
Yeah, I've done this in my class as well, Mark. We call it the Ulta Pulta land. So if I'm asking you to laugh, you're going to, of course, cry. And if I'm going to ask you to cry, then you're going to, and then we add volumes to it, laugh loudly, and you hear the children cry so loudly. And there's so many variations that they are coming up with now, hot and cold. And I don't know how they're going to show cold, but they just show it. Some of them run to the refrigerator and get an ice, and they're rubbing on their face, and they take their time. By the time we've nearly finished the exercise, but they're doing it. So the land of Ulta Pulta is a crazy exercise in grade 1. They love it. They just love it.
Wonderful. Yeah, Radha.
Yeah, so Mark, I did this first with you as part of the Cover the Space exercise, which we do right at the beginning of TIO workshop. And, you do start, stop, and you start with the opposites, and then you increase the number of opposites and mix it up and everything. And we always tell groups that we work with, and especially in the training, that these games are good and they are not just warm-ups. I mean, they do this extremely important thing of, one, bringing people to the moment. So, everyone's coming from so many different places and experiences, and it's so important that everyone come to the moment. And I think there's no better way to do it than get people to use their bodies and to laugh and be silly together. And, so it does that, and then so much more, just build community and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Radha. That's a perfect segue, really, as I want to move to the arc of Theater of the Oppressed and the history of Theater of the Oppressed. But the games are not to be underestimated. Now, certainly, if you're working with children, games are going to be an obviously useful thing because they want to play. But I think even working with adults, some people work in more corporate or organizational settings. In the United States, I don't know, I'm not as sure about India, but in the United States, adults can be very serious and have forgotten how to play, right? And particularly if you're working with adults and you'd spend a lot of time on games, some of the things I've heard, well, when are we going to get to the material? But as Radha said, there are many purposes for these games. First of all, as you saw with the Colombian hypnosis, and if you do it in pairs, right, it's a metaphor for power. So you can use the games to open up conversations and discussions. So you're actually doing the material, but I like to sometimes say through the back door. and working with young people, it's an incredible way to get them talking about real things through play. They don't know that they're being led into a discussion topic on racism, but you can use the games to do that. It's a great way to, and all of a sudden they're talking about stuff. In Theater of the Oppressed, the critical thinking is an important part of it, right? That's inherent in Theater of the Oppressed, as opposed to other applied theater forms. That's not as important, but it's central to Theater of the Oppressed. And the solidarity building, the last thing I want to say, Radha touched on this. If you're doing a workshop where the content is challenging, right? If you're doing a workshop on religious tension or domestic violence, or you're going into difficult subject matter, I think it's even more important to take the time to build community. And the games can really do that. And I like to tell people, it's going to be much easier to go into the difficult material if you can, or what even might be divisive topics, if people can play together and actually be human beings together. You're building a foundation that the group will likely hold together together better. Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of nods, so I know that you're understanding this. Yeah, it's not to be underestimated. People often want to skip over the games. Adults do anyway, yeah. And I recommend against it. That said, we only have 2 hours, so I'm going to skip. I would love to do a few more games, but I'm not going to now. All right. So the history of Theater of the Oppressed. I believe Radha and Ravi at least are. How many of you are familiar with the arc of Theater of the Oppressed, how it started and how it's evolved? How many of you are familiar with that? Oh, okay, so quite a few. Is it not useful then for me to do that? How many would like to hear even a short arc of it? Okay, even some that have heard it. All right, so let me, I will move fairly quickly. If I'm going too quickly, please slow me down, okay? Yeah, all right. So many of you may know that Augusto Boal, who is a Brazilian man, started out as well, he actually started out as an engineer. He went to college for engineering in New York City. But he became a man of the theater, and he ran the Arena Theater in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that did agitation propaganda theater, agitprop theater. They would do revolutionary plays, right, with a very strong political agenda, and it's from a Marxist route, right? And as he tells the story, this is the birth of the Theater of the Oppressed, and I heard him tell the story many times. He was, I believe, with his troupe of actors, performing one of their revolutionary plays in the mountains of Peru, I believe is where it was, for peasants in the mountains. And apparently, at the end of the play, the audience, the peasants, were very moved by it. And they came up to Boal and the actors with tears in their eyes, and said, "This was so beautiful. We are inspired. We will do what you say in this play. We will take arms and we will fight for our rights. Come, join us," they said to Boal and the actors. And apparently, as Augusto told the story, he said, "Well, our guns are only props. They're not real guns." And the peasant said, "Well, that's okay. We have extra guns. You can use ours. Come, join us." And Boal, as he told the story, said his response was, "We are artists. We are not truly peasants." And apparently the look that they gave the actors, he felt such shame that he vowed never again to do theater where he told people what to do unless he was prepared to do it himself. So again, this is me telling you the story that I've heard him tell many times. What actually happened, I'm not sure, but something like that. He calls that the birth of the theater of the oppressed. And so he started to do theater in which he was drawing the stories from his audiences, from his workshop participants and his audiences. What are the stories? What are the problems they want to work on? And then he developed games, and he used image theater. I mean, image theater is not his. It's been done since the beginning of time. Children do image theater all the time, right? Just naturally. It's not. Boal didn't invent much of what he does. What he did was he used common concepts that are in the possession of all humans, and that he was doing anyway in his more traditional scripted theater, right? But he would then create structures using those techniques. He would borrow games from communities that he worked with, right? Or steal games, as he said. He would yeah. And he categorized them, and he created systems, and he wrote books. So that's why he became famous, really. He then developed forum theater, which we're going to work on a little bit today, which, as I told you, is the most famous of all the theater of the oppressed. It's the problem-solving structure. Not only are they going to create the plays on the issues and challenges that are true for them, the groups he's working with, but they'll also figure out their own solutions to their own struggles. And that's forum theater. And we already did a little bit, so you know what forum theater is. They just ran the play over and over and over again, and audience members would come on stage and they would try their solutions. So he's working in Brazil at this point. This is all in the 1960s. Into the early 70s. And then the political climate in Brazil got very difficult. Important to know, he kept adapting the work because of the context, including the political climate that he was in. He could no longer work in Brazil, so he and his team went to Argentina, did work there, and the political climate got very difficult there as well. So in Argentina, he developed a branch of theater of the oppressed. Some of you have heard of the tree of theater of the oppressed. Well, forum theater is one branch. Invisible theater is another branch. And that was basically, the climate was so hot that they couldn't do dialogic theater, because forum theater is basically a community dialogue. It's a community brainstorm, right? They couldn't do that publicly. It was too dangerous. So they went underground and created dialogic plays in which the audience, the unsuspecting audience, did not know that it was actors and a play. So they would do a play about sexism on a bus or in a public marketplace. And audience members were the people passing by or on the bus or in the restaurant, right? And they would either not get involved or they would get involved thinking it was really happening, right? And then the actors would disperse, and much of the time the audience would never know they were part of a play. It was invisible theater. That's a kind of a guerrilla theater. I have a lot of personal feelings about that, just in terms of A, safety, B, the manipulative nature of it. But remember, it came out of a context where they couldn't have the dialogue in an overt way. It had to be an invisible dialogue, right? Lots to say about that form. I've done some. It's incredibly fun. But again, I personally would rather have the overt dialogue, so the critical thinking is brought forth. Okay. Boal at some point ended up going back to Brazil. And again, the political climate in Latin America informed everything. At one point, he was arrested and tortured and exiled from Brazil. And he went to Europe, first to Portugal. He was a Portuguese Brazilian. And he first went to Portugal and ultimately to Paris, France. And this is a very key turning point in the evolution of the work. Remember, he's in a different context now, very different context. And as he says, he started hearing stories, groups he's working with, he's hearing stories of loneliness and alienation. And at first, he's kind of sarcastic about it as he talks about it. He said, that's not oppression. But he kept hearing these stories. And he said, wow, well, in Brazil and Argentina, I was used to the cops, the police being outside, right? They were holding guns to people's heads and disappearing them. But here in France, the cop is inside the head, right? In the French, flic dans la tête, the cop is in the head. So he developed a whole body of work, which started out with the cop in the head, which is basically the internalization of external voices. So it's what people hear in their own heads, regardless if there's other people saying it or not. We sometimes talk about it as internalized oppression. The voices of internalized sexism, the voices of internalized racism, the voices of society that we absorb. Right? So he did a lot of that kind of work. And of course, in France, there was external oppression too, but he developed the internal techniques, which many of you know this book, The Rainbow of Desire. He ultimately called that body of work the Rainbow of Desire techniques. Cop in the head is one technique, Rainbow of Desire is another technique, but that term is a basket term to cover many, many of the internal structures. I've adapted it to look at internalized privilege, but that's for another workshop. So we're in France. Okay, there's really two more pieces that I want to say, and that should give you a pretty good picture. So ultimately, the political climate in Brazil changed again, and he was welcomed back to Brazil. And he's continuing to do his work there. Now, remember, he's also a very political person and a Marxist. And his friends and colleagues in the Workers' Party asked him to run for city council for Vereador. This is about 1990, I think. And to run for political office. And he says, well, I'm not a politician. I'm a theater person. I don't want to do that. And they told him, don't worry, you won't win, but you're very charismatic and you'll bring a lot of attention to our cause. Well, he won. And he became Vereador in Brazil, which is a very powerful role. And at first he was panicked, but then he got kind of excited because he had a big budget and a lot of power to affect change, to vote for laws. So he said, and he took his budget and of course hired an accountant and a lawyer and other people, but he also used his budget to pay his theater troupe to go out into the community and work with different pockets of marginalized groups to find out what laws and policies they would like to see passed. And then he brought those through a new body of work, a new branch of theater of the oppressed called legislative theater. And he would get proposals directly from the people on laws they would like to see passed that affect their communities. And that's how he voted in chambers. And he got, I think, 13 laws passed in that manner. Towards the end of his life, he said everybody should be doing legislative theater, because it's one thing to determine what can I as an individual do in my interpersonal relationships and situations. But if we can use theater to actually change laws, there's some real social change on a more institutional and systemic level. We've done a bunch of legislative theater. It's, if you organize it right and get the right policymakers in the room witnessing it, it's extraordinary. I love it. Yeah. That's legislative theater. And then there's more. His last book is The Aesthetics of the Oppressed, even though it's something that was always part of his work. You know, people who don't have a lot of money to have fancy sets and fancy costumes. It basically is including all of the arts in theater of the oppressed. Paper costumes, costumes made out of newspaper, found objects. You know, can people take photographs, draw paintings? My colleagues in Afghanistan did these memory boxes, which are essentially the aesthetics of the oppressed. These memory boxes, these incredibly artistic representation of their struggles, you know. And then the last thing I'll say is, so I and many of his, what he would call his multipliers, of which many of you are as well, and some of you will become, you take the work and you adapt it to your contexts, to the realities of your contexts. One of the things that's happening in my world here, in particularly, it's informed by the state of racism in the US, or the racial dynamics in the US right now. And the high degree of trauma, it's actually demanding that the work change again. So for example, forum theater on race in mixed space in the United States is highly problematic right now. Forum was designed, and now I'm segueing to forum theater, because and I'll just check in with you before I launch too far into that, but I will say it was designed to work with, as Boal would say, homogeneous populations. Homogeneous as opposed to heterogeneous, meaning with a shared struggle. We have the same struggle. We're all factory workers, right? We're all homeless youth, street youth. We're all victims of or survivors of domestic violence. There's a shared struggle. So the play is created by people who know the struggle, and you can usually find a common representation of that struggle, which is a forum play. And then ideally it's performed for peers, others with that struggle. So together we're all trying to solve our own struggle. Now, forum theater is often done in much more heterogeneous contexts, and Boal loved that. But I can tell you from experience, especially around race, the pitfalls of white people participating in a forum where the protagonist may be a Black person or another person of color, as we say here, and they're bringing their privilege into the space. It's like if you're creating a forum theater play on a women's struggle and men coming into the forum, maybe with all good intention, there can be harm done. There can be, when one brings their privilege onto the stage, there's a lot of ignorance that goes along with that. Like how can a man truly know what a woman's struggle is and the thousands of years of oppression that go along with that, right? The last thing I'll just say about that is it's almost impossible, or it's certainly very difficult, to have a truly homogeneous context. And sometimes it's useful for people who have different experiences to cross-pollinate their wisdom. It's not all bad, but I just want to say, because of our recent experience working with race in the US, a lot of us are looking at how to adapt the work further so it minimizes harm and enhances the benefits. Now, this topic I'm bringing up is not one we're going to be able to address in much depth today, but I'm just letting you know, in the US, the work is evolving, especially through the communities of color that are leading the work here. They're needing to make sure it's done differently than it's been done in the past because of harm done. So that's a history of theater of the oppressed into some of, at least in the US, what's changing. And my work with the theater of the oppressor, right? Doing social justice work, but helping people who carry privilege, part of a dominant group, working with men on sexism in the US, working with white people on racism, working in India, I'm sure, working with people who come from upper classes or upper castes on that privilege. You know, there's ways of doing very important social justice work, but you need to adapt the TO to look at privilege rather than marginalization. As long as the intention is justice for all, that can be really, really meaningful. These are adaptations that are in process, and maybe some of you are doing your own. So that was probably about 15 minutes. Was that helpful?
It was very nice, Marc. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Are there any, I don't want to open up a discussion because that could be very long, but are there any clarifying questions so you understand the arc of changes based on context? Boal broke his own rules all the time.
I have a question, Marc.
Yeah.
So legislative theater could be done in a heterogeneous group. Like I'm sorry, I've never seen legislative theater. What I've been exposed to is forum. So I thought, that even forum could be a way of discussion, or even
Yes.
You could have policymakers and stuff come in and even look at what is happening. So can you explain?
Legislative theater is, the first half of a performance is forum. But what the forum is a stimulant. And the second half was a new process that isn't so much theater. It's theatrical, but it's not theater, where you invite the audience members then to propose new laws and policies that they would like to see happen based on the topic and what came up in the forum. And there are real legislators or policymakers in the audience watching. And you'd have like a mock legislature where a proposal is read, the audience votes yay or nay. And then if the law passes, I mean, Boal, and I've done this too, you have a little gavel and you go, this law is passed, boom. in our mock legislature. And the legislators that are watching the performance are encouraged to take that very seriously. And this is all very, it's very popular theater. It's people's language. It's not in fancy legal speak. It's just regular people talking about what they want to see changed. And it's not necessarily laws. I have found it even more realistically policy change in institutions. We did a transgender youth legislative theater project, and the institutions they were wanting to challenge and change were schools and healthcare and safety, which boiled down to police, right? Those were the three institutions that they wanted to focus on with legislative theater. Outcomes happened. The local healthcare system contacted us immediately after the show, like the next week, and contracted us to develop a transgender training video that is now, 3 years later, still required viewing for all of their 700 providers, doctors, nurses, support staff. Everyone in the entire regional healthcare system has to view this training video. That was an outcome. A healthcare outcome from another project we did was a free dental clinic was opened. That was an outcome from our legislative theater show about healthcare access and affordability. So all I can tell you from personal experience, if you do the organizing well, it really works, or it can work. Maybe it'll change laws too, if you have that level of power in the room. Senators, and we've had part of the reason the free dental clinic was opened was there was a state representative at the show. And he, interestingly, there's a little plaque in the free dental clinic crediting him with helping make that happen. But he was at our show. It wasn't just our show, but I know that informed the process of it actually happening. So I could go on about legislative theater, but forum is a part of it. But then you go concretely into laws and policies, which is not built into the forum.
I'm a little confused over here, Mark, because what I thought was that, when a group comes to watch a forum, it's always a heterogeneous group. So I'm a little confused. Like when you say that it has to be a homogeneous group, so is it the group who is working on the play, or the one who's also come to watch the play has to be a homogeneous group?
This will relate to what we're about to do in the development of forum. It doesn't have to be a homogeneous group. It doesn't have to be, and it's often not. But I'm just saying, with certain topics, if it is a diverse group with the marginalized and the, for lack of a better word, the privileged in the same space, there are potential pitfalls, right? So for example, I did a lot of work with homeless youth years ago, 7 years of regular work with homeless youth. Working just with homeless youth to create plays about their struggles. We would do some performances for audiences just of other homeless youth. That's a homogeneous audience. And then we would do some performances for the general public, right? Some of those were almost all adults, most of whom had never lived on the streets. They have no personal experience of that struggle, right? But the youth actually loved those shows. They called it "Come Step in My Shoes." So a never been homeless adult steps in to play the street youth. They're guessing speculating what that might be like. The youth love that, but what I can tell you is working on race, that gets it's problematic here. It depends on the issue and how you, the joker, the facilitator, hold it, right? That's advanced stuff. Look, I don't want you to worry too much about it. I'm just naming where it can go awry with forum specifically, right? Again, would you want a man to come into your shoes and do what feels like telling you what you should do about sexism? How would that feel? I'm not asking you to answer the question. It's a rhetorical question, but, and maybe that's exciting to you. Oh, let's have the men step in my shoes. They'll see how hard it really is. Or maybe it will be very annoying to you. And maybe the man leaves thinking he knows. You know, we know best, right? But I don't know. It's something to consider when you're doing forum. So forum theater. May we go to that and actually try to create one? Let me see what my timing is. It's a little tight, but let me do what I can. I'm going to put something in. I'm going to screen share for a moment. Can you all see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, okay.
So this is something that I wrote up some years ago. I think Radha and Ravi probably have this from the original manual from, I don't know how many years ago, or some version of it. These are hints and tips to creating a forum theater play. So I'll just quickly go over it. Actually, would somebody be willing to read these so it's not just my voice?
Could you expand it a little bit more?
That's a good question. It's expanded as much as I can do. Let me see if I can make it bigger with view. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
I'll do one more. How about that?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Would somebody be willing to read through these? And if I have anything I want to add, I'll just say it as we go along.
Okay, I'll read it.
Thank you.
Creating a forum theater play, hints and tips. Create a short play, anti-model, 1 to 5 minutes or series of short scenes. A fully developed forum play could run as long as 20 minutes.
Yeah. And what I'll say is 20 minutes is a very long forum play. The forum itself, to get any depth, there'll probably be many little moments where audience members could come in just to attempt alternatives at solving the problem. So you don't need a 20-minute forum play. All you really need is 1 or 2 moments in a play, in a short play, that you can enter and try tactics, right? Yeah.
What do you mean by anti-model?
Not the model of what we want, the happy ending, the anti-model that shows the problem. Because where the process of a forum is looking for new models of action.
Okay. Show the problem, don't solve the problem. Don't empower the protagonists. Ask the question, don't answer the question.
There's a temptation when people are creating a play, when you send a group off to create a play on a topic or a burning question, they will want to talk about solutions. Don't waste time going to the solutions, just show the problem. The solutions are for the audience to come up with.
What are the questions the play is asking? Example, how can I keep my power with my abusive father? How can we take action around police brutality? How can we get better access to healthcare? What do I do when my boss flirts with me?
So what I'll say about this is I used to, and I think this may have been the case when I worked in India with Radha and folks, we would send people off to work to create a forum play based on a theme. Domestic violence was one in Mumbai. Another one was religious tension, right? You can do that, but what I have found is if you start with the burning question, you have an easier time getting to the heart of the play, of the forum play. So that's what we will do today. I hope we'll have the time to get beyond that, but we will do that. And the two forms of the burning question I have found is, how do I, or even better, how do we? So it's not so much about the individual, but it's about the collective, right? How do we ... or what do I do when ... happens? What do I do? What do we do? How do we? Those are great framing questions. Thank you.
Who are or is the protagonist? The style is up to you.
Let me just talk about the protagonist for a moment. So in traditional theater of the oppressed, the way Boal did it, there was a forum play had one protagonist, one, the oppressed character. I very early on broke form with him a little bit because audiences, particularly in heterogeneous groups, might see themselves and their struggles in other characters. So for example, in a scene of sexism against a woman in traditional forum theater, there's one actor playing the woman who's the oppressed character in that play, in that scene. But because there might be men in the audience, well, maybe there's a potential male ally, there's a witness. How do I take part in social justice? I'm not a woman. I do believe sexism is a big problem and the patriarchy is not good for society, right? What do I as a man do to, what's my action? Who's the character that I can come in? Well, I can come in as the woman, but I'm not solving my problem then, my struggle. I'm solving her struggle, and that's actually not my business, right? So maybe there's a character in the play that's a witness or a potential ally, not just having people come in and magically change the oppressor, as Boal would say, that's magic. That's not helpful because that's not really what's happening. The oppressor doesn't suddenly become an enlightened person, and you know what I'm saying. We're trying to create plays that show the reality and give people an opportunity to change their behavior. Now that gets into theater of the oppressor. How can maybe some of the characters do carry privilege around a particular topic, but they still can be agents of liberation. And what do they do? So when you're creating a forum play, what are the characters that you want the audience to analyze potential change? So maybe there's more than one. That is controversial in fundamentalist theater of the oppressed, because Boal wanted it to be the one oppressed. Big topic of discussion. Okay, style of the play. Thank you, Priyanka, if you could continue.
The style is up to you. Realism, allegory, symbolisms, mime, a musical. What
So,
is
yeah, yeah. So in the United States, forum plays often end up looking realistic, but you can use all of what's possible in theater. I know the Jana Sanskriti, Sanjoy and Seema Ganguly, it's one of the oldest TO companies in the world. They're in Kolkata. They're a great resource for you as well. I think Radha and Ravi know them. They use dance, you know, traditional dance. I mean, there's all sorts of theatrical devices. I worked with a group of teenagers once who created a forum play about divorce and their struggle in it as children of divorce, but it was a musical. It was sung and danced. You can do that. You can do symbolism. We once did a play, there was a group that did a play on globalization. And the way the play was structured was the Titanic. I don't know if you know that, that's a famous ship that sunk. It was a real ocean liner that sunk, I think, in 1912. But so there was the working class down in steerage on the lower level of the boat, and then there was the middle classes, and then there was the upper classes, and then there was the captain of the ship that who was the president, George Bush, the president of the United States, was the captain of the ship, who was puppeteered by corporations, right? This was a symbol. And the ship hits an iceberg and starts to sink. But who knows, who are the first ones to know that this ship is sinking? The working class in steerage. And so the play was, how do you, as one of the people in steerage, let the captain know this ship is sinking? It was all symbolism and metaphor for globalization and the suffering that comes from that. It was an incredible play. And I cannot think of a more realistic way to explore how do you deal with globalization. Trying to do it realistically wouldn't have been as powerful a forum. Sometimes non-realistic style plays are the best style to get a realistic series of solutions. Is that clear? It's sort of a contradiction, but it's not always true. Your job is to choose the style of play that you think is going to give the most engaging dialogue for solutions. Yeah, thanks. I'm taking time here, but this is important in the creation of forum plays. And you as the Joker can help the groups that you're doing work with all of this. Help them pick the burning questions. Help them decide who is the protagonist, who's the, what characters' challenges are you wanting the audience to analyze? In schools, are you working with students? The protagonists are going to be students. If you're working with teachers, the protagonist is going to be teachers. What's the teacher's struggle?
Make sure the issue is real, vital, and engaging. We have to care in order to intervene in the forum. Keep it physical, not talking heads. What do you mean by that?
On Zoom, it's hard. In person, it's easier to keep it physical. So often, certainly when we do TO in workplace settings, a common scene is in the conference room at the table, and all of the characters are sitting at the table. And there's things that happen in the meeting, and we want to solve that, right? All I can say is, if everybody's sitting, it's pretty boring theater. That's not to say it's wrong to do it. That may be the scene that you need to work on, but the more you can get the characters doing, rather than just sitting talking. Zoom is all talking heads. That's all that I'm doing now. Boring. Some of you are probably falling asleep. But if we're up and engaged, you know, how can you engage your audience in the dialogue? And I would say as much as you can keep it in behavior and physical, the better. I've got to tell you, the play that was the Titanic, This Ship is Sinking, was so engaging. It was so physical. And sometimes it's just a talking scene, and that's okay.
Okay, I think Shweta has a question.
Mark, can a forum be done as a mime where you
Absolutely.
don't use? Okay.
You can do forum with no words. For example, the Colombian hypnosis, the 2 tactics that we did the other day were without words. You could add words, that would be totally fine. But what are the behavior changes? And so words are not necessary to create social change. One tactic that we never got to with the Colombian hypnosis, and remember that play is metaphorical, right? One tactic is solidarity. I'm going to come in as the hypnotized. I'm going to invite all of the rest of you to turn your cameras on. This is on Zoom, or if we were live, to stand up and join me against the hypnotizer and surround the hypnotizer. We don't even need to talk. All of a sudden, there's now 30 people. The hypnotizer has a whole different challenge, doesn't he? Or doesn't she? Right? You don't need to talk. That's a behavior, solidarity, get help. Right? It's a very powerful tactic, family of tactics.
Theatrical elements are great. Props, costumes, music, etc.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe an obvious thing. You're doing theater. You don't have to get theatrical, but I love it when you have the whole palette of art to support your message. We invite people to use it. If you're in a classroom, you're working with students, what's in your room? What do you have in your room? You know, use things. Or you can make props if you have time. You can make them. Are there any other questions about what is a forum theater play?
Mark, I would like to see some exemplars. I'm just very curious to see how each of these would be really in action. I mean, a musical or a mime, forum theater. Are there any links, any YouTube videos, any sources that you can share with us? It would be great to watch.
Yes.
Because what I've seen mostly is speaking sort of a thing, which is non-physical, right? But these are just absolutely stunning ideas.
Yes. So our resource page on the Mandala for Change, I'm actually going to stop the share so we can see each other. I encourage you to go to our resource drop-down menu. In videos, there are a number of forum theater plays. There's also a legislative theater. There's both a full legislative theater performance with there's several full performances, but there's also a short summary of it so you can see the arc of a legislative theater event. You can do that, and that one, let me just take a quick look so I give you the right names. Give me one moment. I'm going to give you two to consider here. Resources, videos, and then if you want to get an 8.5-minute project summary of the Transgender Youth Legislative Theater Project, that's the last, that's the 5th video. And if you want to see the whole play, that's about 12 minutes. 11, 12 minutes. That's the 6th video. But to see high theatrics, the 7th video is called Land of the Free. That's a forum play created by our Poetic Justice Theater Ensemble that does both playback and theater of the oppressed. But we created a 6.5-minute forum play, which has a lot of theatrical elements and is very physical. That is going to be a really good example. It's not a forum, it's a forum play, but it's just the play, and you'll see some stylistic options.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. I shall do that. Thank you.
Okay. Can we start to create a play? I don't think we'll go very far in it, but I'd like to take you through some steps. Mia, did you have your hand up? Did you get to ask that, or?
No, I was just about to say, like, I did a solo in forum theater format, which is something which I developed and wrote myself, called Finding Fatima. So the link is on YouTube. It was my first attempt to include the physicality in bringing up this dialogue around kind of religious struggle and the things that I went through in Purani Delhi, the old Delhi, people I confronted, especially women and their lives. So I used a lot of physical theater movements and all to open up the dialogue. So even the audience's dialogues are recorded. And I confronted a lot of questions which you discussed today. Like if I have the right to speak about their problem. So the first show is recorded, which is there available. So I'd like to discuss that with you much later, like not in this class, maybe in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And I will touch on that as we're creating a play, because that's a common pitfall, to create a play about other people's problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's the heart of creating a forum play is create a play that shows your own struggles, not other people's struggles. And activists or advocates or social workers or active, even teachers, how can I help others solve their problem? And that, it can teeter into colonialism, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We know what you need, right? And it's very delicate. There's a temptation, and staying really humble. And the heart of theater of the oppressed is the group decides what their struggle is, and the group decides what the solutions are. It is very tempting, if you're leading a group, to want to bring your own opinions into the matter. And a joker, which is Boal's word as a facilitator, it's not a joker making jokes, it's a joker, the wild card in the deck, in a card deck, which is supposed to be neutral. It could turn into anything. Now, nobody's truly neutral, but you do your best at not imposing your agenda upon the groups that you're working with, especially if you have never experienced that struggle. I see Roshan and Shweta.
Mark, can a forum be done like one person? Like, can one person do forum?
Mean one, like a one character
Like
play?
Yeah.
You need an obstacle, right? But the obstacle might be your cops in your head,
Okay.
right?
But then
Your-
that's
yeah, the cop in the head might be you're worthless, right? And that's what keeps you from taking action, for standing up against an oppressor, if for lack of a better word. But then you actually have an actor playing the cop in the head, and the forum can be, how do you disarm that internal voice? That's advanced work. I could lead a workshop in that. I love that work. Cop in the head can be forum.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. How do you disarm the programming that exists in your head that prevents you from your own liberation? Sometimes we hold ourselves back. It's not external, right? As Boal found in France. Yeah. Roshan.
Yeah, hi, Mark. So my question is, like, I work with children and school children especially. So when I saw this poster, I got very much interested about NEP. When I saw that NEP and Forum Theatre and Theatre of the Oppressed, it made me feel excited. So I wanted to know how Theatre of the Oppressed can be integrated in through National Education Policy 2020 and how it can be used in classrooms.
Yes. So I'm in the creation of this play. I'm going to use a school setting. So this can be very adaptable to the classroom. I mean, honestly, the simplest thing that I can say to you, it's no different in any setting. I pretty much do the same thing, whether I'm working with students in a classroom, and I've worked a lot in classrooms, working with teachers, working with homeless youth out in the field, working with or organizational context. The work doesn't really change. It's no different in a classroom than it would be me working with you all now, other than I'm doing it, it's kind of a training and it's academic. When I'm working in the classroom or in any setting, I'm just doing the work. I'm not teaching them how to do Theater of the Oppressed. I'm doing Theater of the Oppressed. They don't care about Boal, most of them. They don't care about all of the theory. They care about their own lives. They care about bullying. And I don't know what are the different struggles, but maybe let's just go right there now. Can we do that? Okay. I'm going to not break a rule, but I'm going to adapt a rule because I think it'll serve you best in this short time. Remember, if I was really working with you all, I would go into, so you as teachers, what's your struggle? But because I think that'll open up a can of worms that will need a lot more time to hold, think back to when you were teenagers. For some of you, that's not that long ago. For some of you, a little bit longer ago, right? Think back to when you were in school as a teenager. And I'm going to invite you to pop into chat in one sentence. What were some of your struggles as a teenager? For example, bullying in the US is a common one. And in modern times, cyberbullying, right? But back when I was a kid, it was not cyberbullying, it was bullying in the bathroom, right? or on the playgrounds. Great. So I'm starting to see things. Body image, low self-worth. Pressure of academic performance, boring classes, lack of self-esteem. Okay, good. So keeping it real, being labeled as a nerd, which relationships, trying to understand my own sexuality, can't oppose the parents, teachers, inferiority complex, bullying, low self-worth, pressure of one notion of success, pressure to always maintain the sincere student identity, not being able to speak up, always someone calling me chinky. That sounds like a racial slur, right? Yeah. Peer pressure. Okay, good. So that's a lot there. Just at our, maybe it's obvious for how many of you, particularly if you work with students, are some of those issues still real today? You see that as struggles that they're having. Okay. So what I would do now is we could take any of those themes and create a forum theater play. Low self-esteem. You don't want to necessarily cover too much territory in one forum play. What I will tell you if you were all students, at least in my experience, teens work a lot faster than adults do. I don't know in India, but in the US, if I'm working with a group of students, they could create a forum play in 10 minutes. The adults might need an hour and a half. Students work fast. They don't need to talk as much. Adults tend to like to talk a lot, right? I mean, I'm grossly generalizing, but students kind of get to it. So let's just pick one. Let me take a look here and see what might be simple. Let's work with the low self-worth, low self-esteem, because we'll be able to get 2 levels of oppression in it pretty easily. All right, and this I think will be interesting to you. Okay, so how do I, so a burning question around that, how do we rise from my low self-esteem? How do I address, combat, rise from, heal from my own low self-esteem? Does that sound like a reasonable question for teenagers, both for your own teenage selves? And obviously some teens have higher or lower self-esteem, so it's not one thing fits all, right? But, and I'm curious, how many as adults, it's a vulnerable question, but how many of you still grapple in any way with low self-esteem, low self-worth? I mean, many adults do. And that's maybe part of the work, right? And what I will say is that's a really useful one, because that can interfere with empowerment with almost any struggle. Right? So now we're going to create an image of a moment where you felt this. And how I'd like to do this, we'll do it as simple, in a simple way, and we'll invite a volunteer or two to sculpt an image in just a moment. So what do you need in an image that essentially sets up a forum play? You don't have to use image theater to create a forum play, but I find it's really useful. Why? It's efficient. You're not spending a ton of time talking, and it forces you to be physical. And sometimes the image, when you bring it to life, is a forum play. You might actually hit bullseye with the image. So yeah, maybe we can collectively do this. So the elements of this image will be a protagonist, the teenager with low self-worth. What is that image? What does that feel like? So it's not necessarily a realistic image. It's probably a feeling. It might be this, it might be this. I don't know what it is, but what does that self-worth look like? Then we'll add elements to the image. This is critical for a forum play. What are the obstacles that the protagonist is facing in their journey towards liberation, right? What are the obstacles that are oppressing or creating the struggle for that protagonist? I'm going to invite you to create 2 different obstacles. One is another individual. Maybe it's a bully, maybe it's a teacher, right? This is in a school setting. What is that character literally saying or doing? Maybe it's a bully beating up the student. Maybe it's a teacher shaming them, right? These are real things that happen, yes? So those are external. Then I'm going to invite you to do an internal one. A cop in the head, right? Obstacles can be internal obstacles. They can be interpersonal. They can be institutional, and they can be systemic. Well, I'm not going to go into the institutional and systemic because that's going to take more time to identify, but it'll be pretty easy to get the external person that's adding to the low self-esteem, and then the inner voice, which might even be a message from a parent. You know, if we're working with caste, what are the messages that the Dalit face? If we're working with women, what are the messages that women face? But for this student, what's the internal message and where did it come from? Is that clear? Two kinds of obstacles, an external one and an internal one. Okay, let's add one more character. So there'll be a fourth character. This is a witness or potential ally. So these are 4 elements of a forum play. You don't need to have all of them in all. You need the protagonist and at least one obstacle. And there may be other characters there, but I'm adding an internal obstacle and a potential ally. So let's actually do this pretty quickly. I'm gonna get, if you can all turn your videos off, please. Stop video. I know I'm talking a lot, but because it's a training, I really want you to understand the concepts. All right. Mia and Mina, if you could stop video, please. Thank you. Okay. I'd like, in a sec here, one volunteer to strike an image of the protagonist, the teenager with low self-esteem, and the image is the strongest emotion that you remember feeling in that moment. Somebody just turn your camera on and strike an image of our protagonist, the teen with low self-esteem. Is that Mia? Okay, good. Hold that, please. Now I'm going to invite one person to come on and strike an image of an external character. As I said, it could be a teacher shaming, it could be a bully, or somebody else. Ritu, strike an image of you as an external character and what your relationship is with. Okay, can you exaggerate that? What are you doing to Mia's character? Oh, so it's kind of laughing at. Okay, good. Hold that. Let's get a third, and this is hard. A cop in the head. It could be a voice from the past that adds to low self-esteem. Parents are obvious choices, but it could be media. It could be anything. Somebody come on and strike an image of an internal voice operating on Mia's character. Okay, so that's kind of a shaming voice. Great. Okay, so now a potential ally, another student. And you don't need to be doing much. You're just going to come on and be silent. Actually, let's keep the others on. Let's keep all of the others on. Mia. Yeah. All right. And Shweta is a potential ally, and that might be like I don't even know what to do, right? But you see Mia's character suffering. And you're not taking action yet. You're in inaction. A silent witness. So thoughtful, noticing. Your classmate, your friend is suffering from low self-esteem. Okay, good. So here's a 4-character play, 3 realistic characters and one voice in the head. I'm going to invite all 4 of you to unmute, if you would, and then return back to your image. I'm going to dynamize. Yeah, so Mina and Ritu, if you could unmute as well. Okay, good. So stay in your image and don't actually move. Stay frozen. All 4 of you are going to speak out loud as the character. You're not you, you're the character. your interior monologue, all of your characters, thoughts, and feelings, stream of consciousness. So Shweta, you'll be talking about what you're seeing with Mia's character, how you're feeling about it, the powerlessness that you feel or not sure what to do. Ritu, you're going to do the making fun of, the laughing at, and Mina, you're gonna just be the shaming voice. I don't know if you're a teacher or what you are, but all four of you.
You said cop in the head, no? So
You're the cop in the head. Yes, yes, yes. So what's the messages that your character is saying to Mina? All four of you speak out loud, stream of consciousness, go please, speak out loud. All four of you speaking as the character, please. And Mina, just all of your feelings, you can speak those.
I feel so helpless.
All of you speaking, yeah, Ritu and Mina too.
how dare you ridicule somebody like that? On what ground? Stop it, it's
Keep
wrong.
going, just stream of consciousness.
It's
Yeah,
wrong.
all of you keep going.
What kind of dress is that?
I really don't know. What is wrong?
Nothing wrong. Dresses don't make
can I-
a person. The personality inside, the person inside you need to look
So
at.
She doesn't even wear makeup.
why does she do anything about it?
She's a
Okay, good, good, good.
person
Thank
from
you. Good, thank you. Yes, stay here because I'm going to take you through a few more techniques. Thank you. How you doing, Mia? Harder on Zoom. I'm talking to the whole group now. Harder on Zoom, easier to notice in person, but I couldn't tell if Mia was in character or really starting to feel. And I'm sensing that it's feeling real to you. How are you doing, Mia? I'm not talking to the character, I'm talking to the actress. Do you need anything?
It was hard.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It was hard.
Yeah. I'm gonna come back on. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm talking to the whole group now, even on Zoom, even in a very short amount of time, being in, and we're playing students, right? But this stuff is also real because we've all been that character, or maybe even still are, right? We all know this struggle. Do you want to pause? Your tears are welcome because they're not just your tears, they're everyone's. Do you want to pause? Yeah. Okay. Good. Is it okay? Do you want to? Is it okay if you stay on screen? Because I'm gonna talk through the next couple of things that we would possibly do.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, why don't we get everybody on screen, please? So everybody can start your videos. So part of the power of Theater of the Oppressed, which many of you know, is that you're embodying the stories, you're not just talking about it. And tears or other strong feelings are quite common. And we'll talk about trauma and safety, but one is slow it down, take a pause. And I would also say that strong feelings are not a bad thing. They're actually a beautiful thing. It humanizes us. How many of you relate to the tears, whether you shed them now or know them from your own life? Mia, just notice how many hands are up that relate to those tears. So there's a few other techniques that I might do with actors. I want to make sure they know what they're feeling. So I would ask each of the characters, how are you feeling? I feel sad, I feel scared, I feel mad, I feel confused, whatever it is. Maybe it's a rainbow of feelings, but identify the dominant feeling. And then very important, this is true in any theater, it's true in Shakespeare as well. I'd ask the characters, complete the sentence, I want, or I want to. Which is the objective of your character? What is your character trying to do? I want to shame her. I want power. I want to speak my voice. I want to run. What does your character want? All these techniques are part of what Boal calls dynamizing the image. Dynamize, that's a TO term, bring it to life. And then because I helped you all structure this, we could quite easily turn this into a short play or even a series of scenes. These 4 characters, and you could add other characters, right? But this is the heart of a very strong forum play. There's a protagonist with a desire to heal the low self-esteem, to liberate themselves from the low self-esteem. The obstacles to that, or 2 of the obstacles, and a potential support person. So that way people could also come in for the potential ally in the forum play. So in a moment, I want to. That's all the theater that I want to do, right? Except for one more thing, and this is in part for Mia, but I'd like to invite everyone to do this also because it's also your story, right? It's not Mia just volunteered for all of us. So this is one way to de-roll, which can help with helping people move through the pain body. So for all of you that relate to low self-esteem, and we saw one image of what that feels like, I'd like you to all strike an image. If you could remove those obstacles, those external characters and or those internal voices, what does an image of high self-esteem look like in your body? Not arrogance, but the liberation. What does healthy self-esteem look like? There's no right answer, but just try it in your own body. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Strike an image, please, of your version of healthy self-esteem. When you're at your best, what does it feel like? Yeah, strike that image and exaggerate it. Go for it. Bigger than real life. And speak out loud some words that go with that, or just make sounds that go with that. Words or sounds that go with that healthy self-esteem.
I am super.
I did it.
I'm so happy. It's amazing.
I'm going to go for it.
Good, thank you. Relax, and let's put in chat, what are some of those words, or if it's just sounds, just spell those sounds. What does healthy self-esteem sound like, or what are the words coming out of your image? And you just type them in chat, please. I love you. It's amazing. I feel calm. You're worthy. Or I could say, I'm worthy, putting that as an I statement. You go, girl. I am what I am. This feels great. La, 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 la. I am visible, relaxed and peaceful. I deserve this. You can fly, or I can fly. It's all so beautiful and light. Yoo-hoo! Great. I do what I believe in. Beautiful. So just by a show of hands, how many of you who know in your own life experience, your own body, the low self-esteem, also know the healthy self-esteem? How many of you also know that you've had both? Right. Yeah, very few people exist only in the low, right? But what we want to remember, this I might call the ideal image. Again, that's a Boa, it's a theater of the oppressed term. The image of oppression is the low self-esteem. The ideal image, what we aim for, is the healthy self-esteem. Was that useful to actually just do that little transformation process? If this concept is helpful, Shez, I'll get you in a quick sec. If this concept is helpful, the process of forum is the journey from the image of oppression to the image of liberation, right? Is in this story, the image of low self-esteem to healthy self-esteem. What do we need to do to get there? Which might mean disarming our cops in the head, which might mean engaging with our oppressors who are putting us down. And it may also mean engaging support. Right? Okay. We have some time for questions. That's a very down and dirty forum play creation process. I see Shez, yeah, and then Shweta.
It's not so much a question as a comment that, straight away, because I think we all felt what Mia went through as well, just by watching. Yeah, we definitely felt what you went through. But what you allowed us to do by striking the pose is the body counterbalanced it for us, and even though I'm not you, Mia, somewhere, my ability to empathize with what you were going through, yeah, needed to also be counterbalanced. So that, even when we do this, with whether it's with children or with adults, the importance of when something hits an individual and the group, to allow, it's an amazing tool that the body itself can take you back to some kind of balance and feeling right about something as well,
Yeah, and it's possible, Shez, that it really took you out of it. That
Yeah.
may be true for you, and it may be true for some of the others, but it may be that it didn't actually take everyone out of it. It's just an attempt to de-roll and counterbalance, because as the Joker, I have a responsibility to send people home after the session in as healthy a space as possible. There's no way you can control it. And you never know what's going on for people. And sometimes just sitting and talking can bring up strong feelings and even trauma. So, there's no way to control everyone's emotional body. But if I notice as the Joker that someone is in their strong emotion and pain, that's okay. But in this case, for many reasons, and I also didn't decide for Mia. I asked, do you want a break? And Mia said yes. So that's, somebody else might say, no, this is great. I really want to stay in this. There's no right or wrong, right? But to be sensitive to the health of not just the individual, but the whole space.
So, that's what I was just pointing out, is that, I know that something went on a very personal level, but I think it definitely also happened for us as a group. Yeah. And the way you handle that, there's a lesson in that for all of us as well. You know, it might like seem like a very small example, but there's so much going on in that example, you know, and how that also, like, I just noticed a shift for myself, right? From how I was feeling in a particular way, and how when I was watching Mia as well, how I felt at that moment. And even when we were watching you say, okay, I need to take a pause. And then what you did post that, Marc, what that did for me personally as somebody, you know, who's just participating in the larger group, yeah, it definitely moved me to a place where I did feel, okay, my balance has been shifted back to a much more like a better equilibrium, let's say, yeah.
Thank you. We have two more hands, and I want to make sure if Mia wishes to speak, because obviously, you know, I mean, you put yourself in a vulnerable position, so I want to make sure you have time to either speak now if you wish, or after a few other people have spoken. Mia, are you? Whoops. Oh yeah, there you are. You just moved. Zoom is so funny. I don't know. Yeah. Mia, do you want to speak now, or do you want to wait a little bit?
I felt safe. And,
I'm not hearing you very clearly.
I felt safe the way your instruction, I was not able to see. So it drew me inside, but I felt safe the moment I heard other voices. Like the first three voices were very taxing, but the moment I heard you, Marc, I knew I was safe. And that's when I remembered I'm in a class, and that pulled me out. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to say about your experience, or, you know, anything you got out of it, or just anything that you feel is important to say to the larger group? Yeah.
It's too early for me to say what I really felt, but yeah, it'll make me think. It's after a long time I did this exercise, this kind of something. So yeah, I would take time. I'll write in the group.
One thing I just want to say, and you touched on this, Mia, the position you chose was very hidden. And so as the Joker, I have several challenges. One is it's Zoom. In a room, I could come close to you, right? But I'm now many thousands of miles away from you, and all I see is a little box. So I'm very limited in what I can pick up from what's going on. And I can't even see your face because you've hidden it. So I'm going to be even more attentive to potentially somebody going further than they want to go, right? These are just things to be aware of. And honestly, on Zoom, one of the things that I love and hate about Zoom are breakouts. But if a group is working on a play in a breakout room, or working on anything, I'm not there. I have no idea what's going on. If I'm live in a room, I might look across the room and see a group working and see somebody crying, or see people arguing, or, you know, I can sense what's going on in the breakout rooms. I just have to pray it's going to work. I mean,
I felt one difference I want to really mention is when I realized my emotion coming back to the room, like from my memory, whatever it was connecting from, I think I'm still very alone in this space, and I'm lacking a human touch, like a hug or something. My body needs that to feel normal again. I think that's what is stopping me from feeling normal again. Like just the very thing I did right now is making me feel good.
yeah, and anybody, you're welcome to do that if you think that would help you as well. We can mirror what Mia's doing. It's a suggestion for those of you that really need touch to help ground you. That's working
for you, Mia. This is for you, Mia.
And
this is for you.
All back a tight hug, because that's what I need to give even before I take it. So yeah. I need to touch a human body to just.
Mia, before we move on, I know we have a few more minutes and a few hands up. I just want to thank you for your realness. And I know you were in your own story, but clearly from all the hands up, that you were gifting us because it was everyone's story, right? Or many people's story in their own version. So TO is not about personal story, it's about collective story. Psychodrama is personal story. Playback theater is personal story. TO is collective story, even if you start with an individual's, right? It's more like sociodrama. Okay, I know we're gonna need to just do a final closing thing, but San Giovanni, did you have something? I see that your hand is up.
Yes, I was wondering if somewhere we run the risk of re-traumatizing in the
Yes.
process.
Yes.
So how do we handle that?
I will say a couple quick things about it, and that would be a great discussion topic. One thing, the first thing I'm going to say is, if I'm working with a clearly traumatized population, for example, homeless youth, I know they are all dealing with trauma, not just family of origin, but on a daily basis. Street youth, that's safe to say, right? I won't work with them without their counselors in the room. And in a performance, if I know it's a particularly delicate topic, for example, we partnered with a domestic violence agency here, and we did a performance on domestic violence, and we had counselors in the back of the audience, and we introduced them at the start and said, if anybody at any point needs support or a resource, maybe not getting counseling there on the spot, but you just, oh boy, this is bringing up stuff from my past, or I need somebody to talk to, there's resources in the room. So there's an element of responsibility when you know there's a good chance it's going to bring stuff up. But then again, trauma can come up at any time, in any place. And honestly, it can, when you wake up in the morning and leave your house, there's the potential of trauma re-traumatization. So then, and everything, there's gray in between, you know. TO can stimulate, you need to be aware of it, and then you need to be willing to change course. I mean, there's so much to say. I also don't want to be patronizing. I don't want to say, your tears are, let's stop. I stopped, slowed down, and checked in, but ultimately, it's the person's decision. It's the group's decision. Maybe this is healing.
Sometimes reliving.
Maybe this is an important thing. And I would say I am not a psychotherapist, but I have a lot of training and background in that area. So I'm very comfortable with it, but I'm not there to do psychotherapy. So there are times we say this particular thing that's up for you, we're not going to be able to work on that here. That's something for you to go to your counselor or to get a resource to, or talk to a friend, or, you know, that this is not going to happen in this space. That said, part of what can be beautiful about Theater of the Oppressed is the collective, and you feel it in person more, the collective support can be profoundly healing, a really good thing. And that's what I think communities have done for each other from the beginning of time. That's a natural therapy, is the community holding. So I don't want to be cavalier about trauma. It's real and important, and it's not our job to heal everyone's trauma. However, if held sensitively, with humility, and to trust that people are going to do what they need to do, some really beautiful things can happen. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
Sir, but what about the virtual space as of now?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
The virtual space that in a physical space, of course, we can do that. But then what about the virtual space? I really don't know how Mia is actually feeling. That's my concern. I don't know if it has any basis.
Yeah, virtual space, I don't like it for this. Personally, I don't like it. But what I will say is also a person can say, I have to take a break and click off the camera and leave, which is harder to do when you're in a workshop. Do you want to hear from Mia more how she's doing for your own peace of mind? Mia, would you be willing to say how you're doing?
I'm being normal now a little bit. Like in my mind, I'm pretty normal in my mind, but physically, because there was some kind of exertion, it's still a little tense than how the class started. The class started with much more. Yeah, I mean that will probably take a little time because, yeah. Otherwise, after hearing, and because it's a technical class where I'm also learning things, and I understand it was just like an exercise. So I'm trying to cut off from the depth of what I went through. Of course, it was painful. It was very hard, but I'm not feeling like if in real life situation, I would probably feel very ashamed to shut door and just get into my poop. But because I know you all have experienced it like a class with me also, so you're not probably judging me, so that's giving me more strength to be here and feel normal, less traumatized. Absolutely, that support I felt. Thank you all, genuinely. Thank you.
So I know there's 3 hands up, and we could have another 2 hours just of questions and discussion, but I need to be respectful of time. I'd like to do 2 quick things. One is, here's another physical thing that you could do to move energy, right? There's a lot of things you can do. The street kids used to like to play fun improv games, comedy improv games, just to get them out of their life stories, you know, but you can also do something like this. I'll invite you all to stand up. We would usually start with a higher number, but just for time's sake, we're going to start with the right hand and go 3, 2, 1, and then the left hand 3, 2, 1, then the hips 3, 2, 1, then the right foot 3, 2, 1. You're just going to do quick kicks, and then the left foot. So you're going to do 5. Right hand, left hand, hips, right foot, left foot. So we're going to go 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and shake it out, just shake it out. You could start with the number 10, right? And then everybody's energy is shifted. Right? There's a lot of things you can do like that. Sometimes that really helps. You just need to get up and move. Shift the energy. TO takes time to integrate, right? Both on a intellectual, the critical thinking level. How are you going to take the learnings into your life? What am I going to do to empower myself? That may take a while to integrate that. Also the body, the cellular memory, if you believe in that the body knows things, the cellular integration, the kinesthetic integration can take time. Yeah, Mia's doing another. You could, yeah, that's a great thing to do too. Just, yeah. I can't take more questions because it's going to be time to go, but can everybody put in chat one thing you can take from these 2 days? One thing you could take into your work, into your practice, and/or into your personal life. And just write that into chat. Just one takeaway, please. something you learned, something you might do. Willingness to give it a shot. Creating characters using the forum theater method. Listening and honoring the wisdom of the body. TO, collective story that takes time to integrate. Companionship, the power of Colombian hypnosis to start conversations. Implementing in the classroom. More clarity in work and life as a facilitator. Practice with humility and trusting myself to continue to engage and work with the work. The group decides what they need as a topic. Very potent handle with care. It is. Eager to try more games on Zoom. Slowing down, listening to the collective energy, your compassion. Role of the Joker, serious business. Thinking of internal obstacles more. Yeah, we did a lot in 4 hours. Attempting to be more observant. I wish I could spend a lot more time with you all. You're thoughtful, courageous, passionate, engaged. It's really fun for me. You're easy to work with. I wish I have thousands of hours of things to offer you. Perhaps in the future we can do more. But in the meantime, Radha and Ravi are a great resource. Sanjoy with the Jana Sanskriti in Kolkata, and Rangbhumi, who I think have at least, Roshan, at least a couple people. I know you all are doing stuff on a regular basis. So you have great, and Shezia, of course. So you have many people down the road from you who know what they're doing and are tremendous leaders in their own right. So thank you for trusting me, and I'll turn it over to Shez to close us out.
Thanks so much, Marc. And yes, already Gauri gave you the drama clap that I was going to give you, so you can continue with that, Gauri and everybody else. But thank you so much. I'm going to give you another one that's kind of fun that I do with the kids as well. And this is, you put some sparkle on it because this is fun on Zoom. Yeah. So like we put some sparkle on it for you, Marc, because it was really so much fun. Like not just fun, but just so insightful as well to work with you. And I think also you challenge us in many ways as educators, and not just as educators, but as individuals as well. And I'll say it again, like from last week's session, by, you know, halfway through the week, I was thinking of things, and it was striking me in various ways about how this work, you know, does affect me as an individual as well. Yeah. And I think the same will happen after today for sure, because I always go back and it's almost like, you know, you chew half of what's going on, and like how a cow like regurgitates cud and it comes back up again, and then you have more to chew on later. Yeah. So I think there's much of that that we need to actually process as well after this session. Like Marc said, there's Radha, there's Ravi, there's myself, and also everybody here on your screen in some way. There is a WhatsApp group. So there is a support of people that you can reach out to. And if you want to do more of this work, of course, please do reach out to Radha and Ravi. And again, I will ask Radha and Ravi if you put your website and your details again on the WhatsApp group, yeah, or even in the chat over here, you can do that, okay?
And Shez, I will send you a few documents. I will send the agenda of what we did.
That would be really wonderful.
And also the forum theater tips in case people
Fantastic.
didn't get those down. I'll make sure you have those documents, and I'm available as a resource. Feel free to email me. I'm easier via email than WhatsApp just because I can track things better, but I'm on WhatsApp as well. Yeah.
But I know that Jehan, my husband who runs the drama school Mumbai, has invited Marc to also speak on something called Unrehearsed Futures. So when that comes up, I'll keep all of you informed. Yeah. So if you want to hear him speak again, yeah, please do come for that. And those are completely free. It's not a paid thing. So you're all welcome. and also pass on, like, these are things that look up the Drama School Mumbai as well. They run a lot of things connected to theater. What we do is more in line with education, but if you want to look at, theater in a global context, not just people like Marc, but we have a community all around the globe of people doing work of different kinds and making changes all over the world. Yeah. And we've been able to, over time, plug into many of them. So if you want to also plug into this network of people, please, keep looking at what the Drama School is doing, look at theater professionals. And if you want to continue, follow what Marc does on his website, because I know myself, I do look at the resources that you mentioned as well, Marc. And over the years, there's been so many times when things that you have actually put up, I've used it and it's helped me a lot. So please also use that resource, yeah, everybody here. And thank you very much to all of you for being present and here as well.
Thank you.
See you again, hopefully in person someday.
And hopefully very soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Big thank you. Thank you, Marc. Thank you, everyone. Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Shiz.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, sleep.
Thank you. Good night.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna sign off soon. Thank you so much, Shiz.
Thanks. It was
for
good
having
to,
me.
it was
Yeah.
good to meet you as well, Spring. I know we didn't get a chance to talk, but maybe in the future as well.
Yeah, totally. This is fantastic work. Marc, if you happen to have like an hour or so in Bellingham, you're welcome to drop by to have a tea.
Thank you. I would love to, maybe in the